Morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the September WASDE report. We should see an interesting report today, given the fact that we do have record yields in play. My name's Sterling Smith. I'm Director of Ag Research at AgriSompo, and joining us is Brooks York, the legend, the man, the myth.
I don't know what to say after that introduction. I don't get that very often. It's usually I mean, I have to be honest with you. It's usually the handsome bald man. So Sterling, you outdid yourself.
Well, I don't want to confuse anybody with
Okay. All
the
right.
baldness is, one of those
I had
things.
the hat on, so I think that's what did it. So Sterling, we got a September report here, and we're kind of in the betweens. We're post growing season for a lot of places in the country. I know anytime you say anything like this, there's always places where rains can benefit. We're also at the beginning stages of harvest as a nation. Really a tough idea to see really what's out there. Historically, what does this September report do to yields?
Well, we're actually looking at ending stocks right here. The September report for corn ending stocks, typically we see a very small cut. For soybeans, we see a little bit of a cut, but this can vary from year to year. If we look at yields though, and we'll go ahead and we'll pull those up here real quick.
I'll set the stage for what you're getting ready to pull up. In last month's WASDE and some of your daily emails, we talked about how typically there's been a little trend as of late for that October time period to show a slight decrease. But September looks like a mixed bag, but I do see some reds in the recent years in September. What's the deal with that?
We've seen in the last couple of years, we did see yields go down in 2024 because we had the drought. No questions, no wonders, there were no great mysteries there. The weather had dried out very badly, and that sent yields lower. What I look at when I do the analysis here, I look at what do we do in August and how does it behave? So if we look here in August, we saw, yields get pushed up. Here, leading up to 2018, when yields went up in August, they invariably went up. So meaning we were having consistent weather, we weren't having a weather issue. Now, if we look from 2020 on, it's kind of a mixed bag here with things chopping about because we had weather issues basically in 20 all the way through 24. There were weather issues. This year, not so much. Yes, it's dried out now, but that's a problem for September's report. Our weather in August was generally pretty supportive to soybean development. So we do have some risk here that we could see yields go up a little bit.
Now, when you mentioned record yields, let's talk about that for a second. And let's just talk specifically about where those were at. We went through most of the year with a pretty large estimate. We never really slipped much from that 50 to 51 type number. And then all of a sudden in August, what happened?
Well, if we go back here to last year, we were humming along. We had a pretty good number. And again, we had the drought, and that sent things lower. So, how we come out today is going to be much more of a function of, what the most recent weather was. Now, what we're seeing outside right now, because the weather pattern has in fact changed. And if we look at corn, generally speaking, we'll do this by net change amount of bushels. We see a fractional decline, but again, kind of the same story. But more often than not, we actually see corn yields reduced. So I think here we're going to see corn yields get pushed back a little bit, maybe see soybean yields go up. Now, if we look right now, the USDA right now is at 183.1, which would be well above the best January yields because we've never seen a January yield above 179. If we look at soybeans, 53.2, that's not necessarily, that big of a number. That number is attainable. So we definitely do have a situation where we are going to be looking at, bigger yields coming through.
we've got a pretty good mix of folks on here from different states. And I know everybody's hesitant to use the chat button, but I would be real curious, which yield you think might be in jeopardy. We mentioned two really strong yields, in fact, record yields recorded. Which one of those yields do you think is in jeopardy through the rest of the season? In talking to some folks over the last few days, out of the gate, as we got into harvest up into the Midwest, early bean yields have been really good. Maybe a little disappointing on the earliest of beans, but once we got into mid-April planted beans, things are strong. There is a little concern here, Sterling, and I'll kind of give you my opinion that the later planted beans in the I states especially, the verdict is still out, and in fact, water can still help these beans, but it's been pretty dry, and the late beans are going to be the big question mark. And we may get into a situation when we're broadcasting the October WASDE report that we still don't have a great handle on beans, because we're talking about 1 bushel per acre impacting what, the carry out by 82 million bushels.
Yeah. So yeah, if we do see bean yield slipping, and I would agree with that, the current situation in the I states, this dry weather that we are right in the middle of, and we are not going to get much relief from. We may see a little rain next week. That can definitely, take a little bit off of the edge on some of those later planted beans. The early planted beans, I don't think we have too much worry about. Corn, we'll see. I don't know if that's going to do that much to yields, really, when we get out in the fields and really see what's going on. If we could pick up one more rain, that would be helpful for the corn.
Joe, Sterling, as we lead up to this release, I mean, obviously we're focused on yield. I think that's probably the number one component. When we look around past yield, what are some factors that we need to take a look at?
Oh, when we're looking at yield, well, obviously weather is the most important thing we have to look at. Weather is what drives yields. When we look at crop conditions, they're amongst the best ever. There is very little doubt that we are going to see a huge crop. My concern with this report is that we're going to verify, in fact, that we are going to see a very large crop. If we look at things, some of these private yield estimates remain above what the USDA is. So we do have a combination here where, we see maybe, fewer corn acres. That means we're going to lead to higher yields. What I think is interesting, though, is the thing that we're not talking about, which is exports. The Census Bureau publishes data and information on exports. And for July, they were surprisingly a little bit better for corn than what we had expected. And that's something where we could see a little bit of a surprise in seeing the old crop supply, the carry in, being reduced a little bit. And that's something where we could get a little bit of backdoor help here with the grain market, with the corn market.
It very well could be. We see that's yields being where they're at, maybe a tick above, even though the last few years has shown just the opposite. I think to Sterling's point, the report, one way or the other, is going to show a big crop. We don't know where the number is going to be. There is a chance, though, that these carryouts, and we're talking about what we have projected to be left over in a year from now, could tick a little lower there, Sterling, and that goes into play with some of the exports and some world production as well. How could we have really strong yields, in fact, maybe even a little bit better, and yet carryouts go down? Could you give us a scenario that could happen?
Well, carryout is a function of production minus consumption. For soybeans, for example, if we see an increase in crush volume or we see an increase in exports, those are the two things where we could see yields go up and we can see that bottom end go down. Crush and the amount that we can process, we know that number. That number doesn't vary very much. Maybe we have additional crushing capacity, which is good, but how much that goes up is really not that big of a variable. Where we do have, potential, maybe these lower prices and a bit of a weaker dollar have done something to help drive that export number, which has been not that great. We have not sent the amount of beans that we need to send to China or that we have sent in the past. That has not happened. And that has left us, we're not going to set records this year. We're going to come in maybe fourth all time. And we've really pulled back to where they were pre the trade war in terms of, bean exports going to China.
So Sterling, we talked about, weather being important, and you and I had a little talk yesterday about here pretty soon, whether that's in 30 days, 45 days, we're going to focus on a whole new crop in a whole new hemisphere. And of course, that's down south in South America. When we talk about exports, this is kind of what's unique about this is, there's a chance during this crop year that we pick up additional exports based on a short crop in places like Brazil and Argentina. And even now, we may see some issues out of Ukraine. We don't know exactly what's going to go out there. It's modest, maybe 50 million bushels. You mentioned about exports, and I get a kick out of it. People say, well, they don't like to buy U.S. corn and beans. I don't know whether it's a like factor, but it's definitely a money factor. But where we see these shortfalls in the globe, one thing we know is they will be coming out of U.S. stocks in the most likelihood. So if we see Argentina not produce this corn to the extent we've got them slated for, that adds straight to our exports. So lots of factors. Sterling, we're going to switch gears here in next month's marketing meeting, talking about all things Brazil and Argentina, correct?
Exactly. We have weather going on down there. We have wildfires in Mato Grosso. We have hot, dry weather going on. We have an El Nino that is coming into place, which is going to affect our weather here and beginning to affect it right now with the dryness we're seeing. But we could see, material dryness in Brazil, which Brazil is normally a very wet place. If we see that, these ideas for these enormous South American crops and the ideas for Brazil's crop are enormous. If we can set that back a little bit, that's something that may take some of this bearish tone off. It will also mean, if there's concern, we will see those exports ramp up and we will see them earlier rather than later, and we'll see a pickup in export sales.
To kind of add a little bit of color to what Sterling's saying right there, in Brazil, when we calculate our carryouts for 1 year from now, which may seem absurd, but we got to start someplace, right?
Yeah.
For 1 year from now, we throw our exports into that mix. And right now, Brazil's production numbers for this upcoming crop, before they're even planted, about 6% higher than we've seen in the past. So the big question is, will that 6% be there? Will we even see where we're at? That can change our carryouts tremendously on soybeans.
Yeah, that's the difference between, us seeing beans that can cling and hang on to dear life to maybe hold $10 versus if we see production in line with last year, maybe even a little smaller if the weather is really bad. We could see, maybe push these beans $11.50, $12, $12.50 on beans if we see that, and we have, similar problems in Argentina. But we are going to need that weather to happen. If we see good weather and we break out of this hot, dry thing that we're currently in, that could be a problem, because right now hot and dry means it's really easy to plant. So it's going to be very easy to put this crop in.
Well, Sterling, according to my clock, we're down in less than a minute for release.
Can you see the screen? Are we seeing the?
There they are.
There we are. So let's see what we have here for corn ending stocks. We're at 2057. That's down from 2073. So a smidge lower as expected. Yields, we are at 183.6. That raised them half a bushel an acre on the yields. Soybean yields at 53.2 stayed the same. Soybean ending stocks at 550, actually a little bit lower. Most ideas were we were going to see soybeans come in at 570. They came in at 550. Wheat ending stocks at 828, unchanged. about as expected. Nobody was looking for anything too big with the wheat numbers. And let's see what we have here for soybean production for new crop. Again, for Brazil, 169 million. That is up. That was what it was last time, but last year they produced 153 million. 16 million metric tons is a lot of soybeans. A lot of soybeans. Old crop corn, 122, new crop 127. So the USDA did not adjust anything there for South America. Cotton numbers. Let's see where cotton ending stocks ended up. Cotton ending stocks at 4 even. We've seen a little bit of a bubble up in cotton prices of late. Conditions have come down, and seeing a little bit of ending stocks might do something to help the cotton market out because the funds are deeply short. Looking at market reactions here, let's go ahead and get the picture up here of this. What do we have here?
I think we've got corn down a little bit, beans stable, maybe a little higher here, and wheat just kind of treading water up a penny. It looks like on my screen, Sterling.
Here, let's see what we can do about getting.
Which that corn number, that's pretty big, and we may be setting ourselves up there to see an October trend of a decrease there. If you look at how things played out, kind of played out a little bit like Sterling said that would. We could see a slight increase in yield that happened on corn, but carryouts cut just a little bit on corn and soybeans for next year. Again, probably due to export number.
Well, here, actually, our carry in was 1867 last time on corn. The new one is 1812. So they didn't touch new crop. New crop was actually production will be higher. What they did was they took the exports out of old crop, which is about how we expected things to work out. With soybeans, 1850, they didn't do anything there. Let's see about soybean old crop. Soybean old crop ending stocks, they cut those by 5. So that accounts for most of the change in the soybeans. Corn right now is down, as you can see, down about 7 cents on the December contract, 3.97. November soybeans at 10.01. That's up 3/4 of a cent. And wheat mixed, down 1 to 5 cents, depending on where you're looking. So again, confirming big crops. No real big surprises off this report.
Okay, giving back on corn what we've gained the last couple of days.
That was my fear. I think seeing December corn range bound, I think when you get below 3.95, that sparks some buying interest.
Yeah.
When you're clearly below 4, I think you get some people willing to step up and buy. Maybe 3.90 is, your bottom end for now. 4.10 maybe the best you can do till we start harvesting, and we'll see how the market reacts to getting that new crop in hand. That would be the next thing, and we have to counterbalance that against what we see coming out of South America.
Lots of things to consider. You're going to talk about spec funds and Friday's report. We're still sitting on a big short there. It's too logical, Sterling, to say we're going to let the farmers sell this thing lower and then we'll start to take profits. So the spec funds can be a game changer at any point in time, and I'm sure that's where you're looking at this 3.95 number as pretty strong support.
Yeah, and it's not support from the funds though. The funds are going to need to see a change in the conversation. We're going to need to see the funds start to think that we have a problem in South America. That's what we're going to need to get them to buy. When they start to believe that, things can change. But until they feel confident in that, don't expect them to be too aggressive in terms of buying or being in a big hurry.
Aaron just asked, haven't the funds been buying? And the answer is yes, but the short position still remains what, Sterling, around 1.2 billion bushels short corn at the moment.
Yeah, we're short of probably 150,000 contracts in corn, and about the same in soybeans. So yes, they have been nibbling and they have been buying a little bit back. And, prices trading north of 4, they may very well have the last couple of days been selling them again.
Yeah. And
We saw the market reverse there with not a lot of news.
Yeah. Yeah. Wayne wants to know what sort of rumor we can start about South America. And I think if you can start it out of Ohio, Wayne, it's really hot and dry. How about that one?
It's on fire. It's burning, which is not a rumor. That is fact. There are material dryness problems. There's soil dryness. There are issues with that. And the problem is, if it changes, we're going to have a monster crop. So it's got to stay dry.
Yeah,
And that's
kind of
really
the old,
where
analogy of an April and May drought in the United States allows everybody to get planted early, get that seed in the ground. Let's hope that's not the case down there, Wayne.
Yeah, because that's the real material risk we're running. They've just started planting corn, in the last week or two, and they're going to start planting soybeans here shortly.
Yeah, to Sterling's point, was this we saw corn down 7 there right after the report. Spec funds involved in that, absolutely.
Yeah,
it wasn't a rush by commercials to sell this thing at the report and farmer selling. So
no,
we'll see if this thing doesn't regulate here shortly. Beans up 6 is a good sign.
Yeah, we'll see how well they hold. My guess is beans up 6 to 10. Well, if we get November beans 10, I think that invites selling. We'll be lucky if we can keep corn above 4 and beans above 10. I'd call it a good day.
Yeah,
because that's about where we're at, because there is nothing shocking in this report, and again, there weren't any big deviations from expectations. Maybe the beans a little tight, but only a nickel's worth. Corn ending stocks a little bit lower, but they raised production on the crop. So there you go.
Pretty interesting seeing corn down now a penny. It's made it a long way back.
And just looking, I'm checking the dollar here. The dollar's a little bit lower. The PPI numbers this morning were in line with expectations. The CPI numbers yesterday were as well. We should get at least a 25 basis point cut in interest rates next week, which looks like it's thoroughly baked into the cake. If we get a 50, that would probably be a little bit bigger surprise.
Sterling, can you pull your screen up a little bit on corn?
Like that?
There we go. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I was looking at that right, because when it went down, I saw wheat, and yeah, I thought I was seeing some corn numbers that were right. So
yeah, wheat's picking up a little bit, and we've got the beans here. The beans up 10, and that's helping the corn out. My concern is if we get the beans up a little too much, is that going to attract some selling? That's my worry, or the buying just dries up, which is our other little concern that we have going on here. We do have crude oil nicely higher today, a couple dollars a barrel after getting thoroughly trashed. It's still below 70. And that is creating a little bit of room for the soybean oil and improving crush a little bit, which that can lend a little bit of support to the beans as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, we will see everybody next time around. Sterling, we've got a marketing meeting coming up here. What day is that coming up on?
That is a week from today.
Week from today, 9 o'clock.
Third Thursday is a week from today at 10 o'clock. And we're going to put on our thinking hats, and we're going to talk about South American weather. It's not that big of a deal yet, but for the October meeting, I think we're going to get our weather guys from Planalytics on. We're going to talk about the weather, because by then it's going to start making a difference.
Yeah. Well, very good. All right. Well, everybody have a great end of the week. And hey, we're seeing some green on the board there on the big tree, so we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll see how the beans finish up. That's what matters. But at least they're snapping the ball well. I'd like to thank everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.